Well, welcome everybody. Welcome back to the Not So Perfect podcast. My name is Colton Daly. As always, I'm your Not So Perfect host. And today's an awesome day. I've been looking forward to this day to continue to pick up this podcast. I've been feeling really called to get back on it. I've gone through an incredible transformational journey these last 6 months where I feel like I've just gone warp speed. I hit a black hole into my own expansion of consciousness and my own enlightenment journey. And feel fully prepared to jump back on here and share a lot of this love and this light that I've seen to find for myself with you guys. And the most special part about today is I'm able to bring the first guest onto the Not So Perfect podcast, a man that is very dear to me, a man I love very much. He's been a coach to me for a long time. I signed this man to be my coach about a year ago. He has helped me tremendously in my own evolution. He's a wizard, as I like to call him. He's a genius. He is quite the story, but he's also an absolute goober, one of the goofiest people I know, and that's why I love him so much. So without further ado, everyone, this is Graham Lichtner. Graham, how you feeling, man?
I'm good. I'm feeling cheery.
Cheery. That's a beautiful word.
Cheery. Yeah, I don't think I've ever actually used it to describe myself. Nice.
It fits you perfectly, man. Just to give everyone a backstory about Graham, man, it's been over a year now before I really ever knew Graham, and I was actually dating a girl at the time who decided to work with Graham as a coach, and I went to Graham's Instagram to see who Graham was and if he's somebody I would want to explore being a coach. And as I looked at his Instagram, I saw one of the weirdest, goofiest goobers I've ever met in my life. And I was like, dude, this guy is he's out there, man. There's no way I could allow him to be my coach. And fast forward 6 months, the reason I decided to hire Graham to be my coach and to lead and guide me in business, but also in life, is because he's an absolute goober. And he's weird, but he's full of so much love and completely owns himself and does not really care whatsoever what people think about him. And that's something I admire so greatly, because the journey that I've been on for many years is trying to learn how to live life with the ability to dance like no one's looking, to sing like no one's listening, to truly be myself and to find myself. And Graham's been a huge part of helping me come into that, step into my power and believe in myself. And so, Graham, I just kind of want to dive into that and hopefully give the listeners kind of a bird's eye view of your journey and how you got to this point of finding so much love for yourself, man, finding so much joy, so much confidence, so much peace. How did you stop really caring about what other people think about you?
Well, first and foremost, dude, thanks for having me on, man. I want to say this, you're the not so perfect host. I'm the not so perfect guest, right? So I think that needs to be established for everyone listening. And if you're going to listen to this, I don't know how long it's going to be, but hopefully you can be the not so perfect listener. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's in the personal development space, there's this obsession with completion. Like, I need to 100% have taken everything away from this podcast. Otherwise, I need to listen to it like 8 more times for it. Versus just like allowing the natural lesson that's ready to be received just to be downloaded and then to be integrated. So hopefully you can be a not so perfect listener. I'll be a not so perfect guest. I'll be a not so perfect host. And we got some not so perfect sauce, right? And thus the sauce.
What is the sauce, Graham? I feel like we need to establish that.
What's the sauce? I don't think everyone's ready for that yet. We'll get there.
I think it's inexplicable, man. The sauce is inexplicable.
That's it. The question you asked me was, how did I get to a place where I don't really care what anyone thinks? And I think that the only way to get to that place is to care a lot what people think. And I have, and I still do care a lot what people think. And I always have. And I really did when I was younger. I cared a lot, to the point where I would minimize myself or disguise myself, or, we talked a lot about this, wear many different masks to hide myself, hide the differences that made me unique so that I could fit in, so that I could be a part, so that I could roll with the quote unquote cool kids, the people who were, I'd say just either more culturally aligned or just more themselves, like cool, so to speak. And so I think that having had that as the background and been in a place where I was really exposed to myself in a very people-pleasing and very, like I said, minimizing way, it allowed me over time, when I finally got sick and tired of it, to start just doing things that were just different. Right. And I think for me at first, it was like I did very very different things. Like I did a bodybuilding show that was like a way for me to really separate myself from the person that I had been being. And I think this is a great introduction into a conversation we'll probably have on here today about moving out of a memorized pattern of life and into a much more non-linear and moment-to-moment experience, right? There's a lot of talk right now. Get in the moment, be in the moment, just be in the moment. And I think, we talk about the sauce. We're getting into the sauce is getting into the moment, which is what we do at the retreats and kind of the essence of the type of work that I do with my clients, et cetera. But it's also the beginning of me expressing myself in a way that allows me to take into consideration how much I care what people think, and equally how little it matters what they think. And I think that in between right there is where the strength comes in to continue to move in a direction that feels good to me, regardless of how I might have used to be in that same situation. And so I think like what I'm saying is everything's on an axis. So to really not care what people think, I also have to simultaneously care a lot what they think, or at least
Right.
be aware enough to understand what they think about me or how I am making them feel about me or their perception of me, whatever. But I think that's the beauty, is that knowing that and knowing where I want to go, I get to make a decision. I get to choose what I want to do in the face in the face of that quote unquote adversity. For example, I could come on this podcast and hold myself to a professional style or culture, which would be I'm wearing, maybe I don't have a hat on. Maybe I'm wearing like a nicer shirt. Maybe I'm like standing up a little straight. Maybe I'm quote unquote more professional. But I have a choice to forego any perceptions people have of me so that I can be in a place where I feel really good. And where am I going to speak most powerfully is where I'm comfortable within myself. And that's me wearing a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle shirt that says pizza time. Why? I love pizza. I actually might have some today. And that's more important to me than looking good for other people.
Right. I want to stop there for a second because so much has come up for me. First thing to give the listeners some context, you are a life coach, you are a business coach, you do host men's retreats. I know previously you were in the fitness coaching industry, you had hundreds of clients. So obviously the amount of wisdom and knowledge you have in this space is quite profound. As you began this whole conversation of explaining this, you talked about the mask, the mask that we wear, and rather than trying to be this person you thought you were supposed to be in this human programming, right? You were able to break out of that to find the truth of who you are. And even as you said the word mask, I had all this emotion rush over me because when we first met each other, I was wearing such a mask. Right? And to know, like, in that moment, you were able to see through that mask and really see who I was because you saw yourself in me and guide me through this journey. That just got me so emotional because, breaking out of that mask and starting to let that mask go and finding myself and loving the person I am has given me so much freedom and so much joy and so much love. And so I just like so much gratitude and emotion just came over me in that moment. And I think that's one of the biggest things I hope people take from this is that for most of us in our society, let's just call it the quote unquote matrix. So many of us are living out a story, living out of a programming of the ego. And I know for me in my life, I was trying to be who I thought I was supposed to be. I was acting out this version of myself that I thought I was supposed to be, this person that gained validation, that person that gained acceptance of approval. I would change the way I speak and I acted, and I would hide who I truly was to make sure I fitted and didn't get judged. And a common quote from Jim Carrey, because I was experiencing a lot of depression at this time. And Jim Carrey says that our depression is just our avatar's way of telling us it's tired of playing the character it's playing. And so this has been the biggest journey for me, and it sounds like exactly what you've been saying.
What do you mean?
As far as you came face to face with that programming, in that moment you could make a choice. Like, do I want to continue doing this, or do I want to do what I want to do? Do I want to wear a Ninja Turtle shirt, even though everyone else is going to think I'm weird? As I did when I first met you. I was like, this dude's wearing a Ninja Turtle shirt playing with swords. Dude, he's a freaking weirdo. Until I found out who you were and wished I could have the confidence and the courage to wear a Ninja Turtle shirt and play with swords.
Yeah, I mean, I think I personally think that a lot of the personal growth and development space is really fixated on getting to a point where they've created such a thick outer layer, a different type of mask, that they pretend things don't bother them. but really do, like a lot, to the point where it actually fuels their behavior and puts them into overdrive. Silence the haters, do that, like we're just gonna out hustle, out whatever, out blah, 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 insert thing in order to combat the emotions I have when someone thinks something of me. And for me, I'm a lot more like, I'm fine with everything that you're saying, because I know that no matter what you say, it's actually going to gift me awareness about part of myself that I need to better understand so that it doesn't bother me anymore. So I love it. I'm like, great. Like, what else do you have to say? I'm like, it doesn't feel good. Like, I know it's gonna sting my ego, but if I can, like, and this is the word, is humble myself to a point where I can really receive feedback, well, then I can bring it into my domain. I love this quote from Game of Thrones. Tyrion Lannister says it to Jon Snow the first time he ever meets him. He says, what would more or less, he says, if to Jon Snow, he says, if you can learn to be okay with the fact that you're a bastard and you can wear it like armor, it can never be used to hurt you. And Jon Snow says to Tyrion, well, what would you know of being a bastard? And he goes, all dwarves are bastards in their father's eyes. And that always stuck with me, because there's so much power in just the owning of what I already am. And some of you listen to this, the way to understand this is if you've ever seen the movie 8 Mile, the last rap battle that Eminem has, the way he wins the rap battle is by dissing himself in every single way possible ahead of time, so that by the time the dude has a chance to rap battle him back, he has nothing to say. Right? Eminem owned it all. That's why we loved him, and that's why we loved the movie. It's the same thing with Jon Snow. It's the same thing with me. And it's the same thing that I think a lot of people want to start stepping into, but just aren't really sure of how exactly to do it. And so, through that causeway comes this door of choice, where I get to this place where, I've become aware that, I feel this way, right? And I feel this way about how people feel about me, but I want to do this because it's who I am. I get to make a decision, and that's where I feel like, we talk about Leaders Legends, we talk about your journey, we talk about my journey. That's where the wielding the sword and actually exercising the power that we've developed within ourselves comes full circle. And it's those repetitive moments of choice and action that start to define someone's life in a new way and start to create a new confidence about a person. And, when you ask me, how did I get to this place? It's literally right through there, right through that causeway of just like lowering my guard, right? Humility to better understand myself, so that I could better understand other people, so that I could better understand how to communicate with other people in a way that feels really good in my heart, but that also moves me in the direction that I want to move and get more of what I want, more of what I desire, and leave people feeling really good about me. Thus, as I personally feel like a life of a lot of ease, a lot of efficiency, a lot of relaxation, a lot of incredible, beautiful experiences, and a lot of incredible, beautiful relationships. Mostly because I understand where people are coming from when they speak to me or communicate things to me, or when they have a perception of me, because I spend a lot of time doing that with myself. I think that's the essence of what we're talking about.
And I think something I admire so much about you is that you stay so true to your integrity and who you are, despite any situation, despite any moment, any emotion that you're experiencing. You always stay true to who you are and express your truth. And that's something I really admire. And something you said was humility. And I think that's so overlooked, because, for a while I always thought my way was the right way, and the way I saw it was the right way to see it, until I realized, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know. And as something you like to say, I don't know anything, ultimately. And and so even for anyone who's listening, it's like, look, we are just humans too. There's no rule book that's been given to life. There's no correct guide that shows us the answers. There is no right or wrong, right? So this is all an individual experience. And what's so beautiful is when you can humble yourself and say, hey, maybe there's something that the way they see life that I can add to mine. Not that we're trying to make you see it the way we see it, but hopefully if there's one thing, if you have enough open mind and open heart to just receive, humble yourself, it could be a beautiful thing for you.
Yeah, and I think, on that topic, because I actually did a podcast the other night, and humility was a huge part of the conversation, because that's the gateway to a Leaders of Legends retreat or coaching. I know the work you do with your clients, the work I do with my clients, even the work we've done, it all came through that lens of, literally, you literally just said it. Like, when I first met you, I thought this. I knew you thought that, and I knew that was an opportunity for me to better understand myself, and in me showing you, like, a different type of this is really epic. A different type of love, of like Colton, like, I don't really care if you think this of me. Like, I still see that you're amazing, and it has nothing to
Yes.
do. I personally don't care whether you think X, Y, Z about me helping you. I just see you, and this is the way I see you, and I just wanted you to know that. And to
And
me,
I got to stop right there, because this is what broke me, and this is what allowed me to let you win, because I kept everyone at arm's length. I never let anyone get too close. And that might be because of what I experienced, and I never wanted someone to get too close in case they walked away and I wouldn't feel that pain. But I let you do that. And the word specifically is unconditional love.
yeah.
Unconditional love. And that's been the greatest gift that I've learned. And the greatest gift that I've learned for myself, and now I'm able to give everybody else, is unconditional love. Because I can sit here and it's no matter what you think, no matter what you're doing, I can love you unconditionally. And I think for majority of my life, I only loved myself conditionally. And how I love myself is only the extent of how I can love others. And I heard something so beautiful recently where someone says to someone else, I love me, therefore I can love you. I forgive me, therefore I can forgive you. And I no longer judge myself, therefore I no longer judge you. And that's been the greatest gift for me personally. And now what I realize in my coaching practice is the greatest gift I can ever give someone else. To truly sit here and just be present and to love unconditionally. And I have found it rips the walls off of a human's heart and does the miraculous work all on its own.
Everybody hear that? That's good. That's true. That's dope. It's awesome.
So I guess moving forward,
you know what it is? It's humane, dude. It's humane, man. Like, it's so humane. It's what humans are capable of. It's the essence. So, I'm first of all, I'm very happy for you and excited for you, and really excited for myself for not allowing your perception of me to thwart our relationship. Right? Because it's really easy to just be like, oh, well, this person thinks that I'm X, Y, Z, so, I mean, we probably won't be friends, or I probably should keep them away because I don't want to feel bad, or I probably should. For me, I'm like, great. The funny thing is I see your weird side, too, that you pretend that you don't have. I know you're getting weird, doing, you're playing video games, League of Legends, or whatever it is, and just doing your thing, and everyone's got that part of themselves, so... I think, like, on the topic of conversation of humility and that being the gateway to doing the work, which I feel like to a degree this podcast is going to be about, is like, how do what is the beginning of me discovering myself? Well, it all starts with me me actually believing and being okay with the fact that, like, let's just say, if I didn't know everything and if I didn't have it all together, like, what would be wrong with me? That's not the question. What would I know I need to work on, right? And that's the beginning. It's like, if I actually believed that I didn't know it all and that I didn't have it all figured out, what would I think I need to work on? And if that's the question that can be asked, then the next thing that can happen is like, this is what I see that you might need to work on. Okay, well, why do I need to work on it? Well, because this, and this, and this in my life aren't moving in the direction that I want, or this in my life are causing me pain, or this in my life aren't in alignment with who I am. Okay, well, like, how did we get here, right? See, now we're already doing it. We're asking the questions. We're creating some new awareness. We're seeing things more clearly. And then that next evolution is like, one person sees me as I am. And then this is fun. The retreat is like 12 people see me as I am, right? And the beauty is that each level, each person that sees you is an amplifier. Right? It's like 2 to the 3rd, 2 to the 4th, 2 to the 5th, 2 to the 6th, 2 to the 7th. And we remember busting our calculators open trying to do those equations back in the day, dude. All of a sudden the calculator's error, because the number is so big. That's the type of energy that comes through when we allow ourselves to be seen by that many people. Right?
It's
and
just
appreciated.
love magnified, for sure.
Right, magnified. Appreciated, loved, supported, cared for, inspired. Right? That's the type of... You can even just look at me. Just look at me. This is the type of energetic exchange that happens. It's like, I give to you, I receive. And thus, we enter the sauce.
Well, it's just so freeing, man. It's so free. I feel like I had so many shackles and chains. I couldn't express the truth of who I was. I couldn't be this goofy inner child that I was because I had to fit this molded image of who I thought I was supposed to be. Right. And so something you were saying earlier is that at some point, along this journey, you come to a full acceptance of who you are. But the question I had to ask myself, and this was specifically in this moment, I remember having this conversation, and I'm so glad I had you in this season because it was one of my darkest seasons. I remember I was in Las Vegas, dude. And I was partying for 4 or 5 days, and after like 4 or 5 days, I remember looking out of the window of this hotel when I woke up, seeing all of this party and play, and thinking this is what everyone in this world is chasing after, thinking this is what's going to bring them joy. And I was in it, and at that moment, I was more depressed than I've ever been in my entire life. And I was like, is this really it? Is this all there is to life? All right, and that really sparked the dark night of the soul of finding out who I am. But I had to ask myself this question: who am I, and who am I outside of the version that I created myself to be? Who is this beautiful I am, this beautiful consciousness, this beautiful spirit inside of this human shell, this outside of this human program that I created myself to be? And so I preface this by asking you, how did you find out who you really were? Right? Because obviously you have a crazy background that, that much people don't know about. I mean, you had quite a wild life. You were a partier. I know you taken plenty of drugs in your time, and it was pretty extreme. And how did you go from this to a complete 180 to this beautiful, peaceful man who is so present, has so much love? How did you find yourself?
Well, I mean, I think I think the perception of the 180 and how long that takes is the illusion. Is that
Yes.
it's a 180, but it was extremely slow. It was 1 degree at a time, if you will. But I think that a great way to get clarity on oneself is to look at the most important moments of your life and look and actually analyze what you did. Like, what choice did you make when you were given these 2 decisions? What did you do? And for me, for a long part of my life, I kept choosing the opposite of who I was, and that was really painful. But what I noticed was that in the most defining moment of my entire life, which was more or less when my dad got sick with cancer and was, slowly dying, I had a choice. I could continue to sell drugs and make lots of money and reinvest that and build businesses and do things that I had been doing that had brought me on paper, quote unquote, success, but had left me feeling really empty, hollow, really dishonored. Or I could start moving in a new direction with no idea exactly where I was heading, but with a newfound belief in myself, a newfound trust in myself, and a newfound likeness for myself. I don't think that I was really in a place where I was able to look in the mirror long enough to really, get into that energy. But I started to look in the mirror and be like, hey, I like this guy a lot more than I ever have before. And that kind of came full circle in that moment when my dad died, and I had an opportunity. I could go right or I could go left. And what I decided was that I was going to move in this direction, and I was never going to turn back. And that was over 7 years ago, and I've never wavered from that path. But when I look at myself, I've been in situations where I've made decisions that were not who I was. And I noticed that in the most important moments, though, and there were a couple when I was going through the darkest times where, when I got the wake-up call, or when I had the unbelievable thing happen, the thing that felt like divine intervention, I started to choose the correct path. I started to be like, okay, I'm going to listen. And that was the beginning of me being humble and being like, hey, I don't know it all. And I'm going to end up in a really, really bad place if I don't change my fucking behavior. And if I don't start choosing decisions that are in alignment with my heart.
Yeah. So stop right there, because you said I chose the correct path, and you said I started to listen. And then right there, you said I started to make the decisions that are in alignment with my heart. How did you know what the correct path was?
We all know what the correct path is.
I agree.
We lie to ourselves, but we know.
I agree.
When we're in the moment, we know what the right decision is, and ignoring it is understandable. And I've done it, and I understand how people do it. Avoiding it is understandable. I know how people do it. I know how I used to do it. Running from it, been there. Choosing to do the opposite just to spite the other decision, done that. Choosing the right decision, though, hardest thing, because it requires courage, which is something that a lot of us, myself included, had never, up until that really a couple moments in my life, ever had the opportunity to express. Never had the opportunity to express courage. I never was in a situation where I could really step into that and be like, okay, I'm going to step into this energy of courage and move into a person that I know is capable of doing this thing that I need to do, or making the right decision, or moving on the path that's most aligned for me. So I think that when push comes to shove, it's just it comes back to the humility and looking in the mirror and being like, what's the right decision? I mean, like, what is the right thing to do here, and making that decision and starting with that, and that's one. And then one more.
But before, I want to stay even right there, because I think that's huge. Because I agree with you. I think the heart always knows the right decision, but that right decision, right, it is not going to be easy. And courage does come into play. And courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the willingness to step into the fear. Courage is the absence to be willing to step into the arena. And I think that manifests itself in our life over and over and over again. I think there was times in my life when I was in a relationship, and I asked myself the question, am I going to spend the rest of my life with this woman? Right? Because on paper, she checked all these boxes. But like in my heart, I knew it wasn't. But I spent years essentially maybe wasting time, right? Because I didn't have the courage to hurt her, to lose her, and it was safety, right? And there's a moment when I was in the 9-to-5, and I was like, but I know my heart's desire is to impact and to be a coach and to do this. I'd be willing to step away from the safety net of having that paycheck, right? And so I think over and over again, even in the minor decisions of our life, courage is going to be one of the biggest factors.
100%. And I really actually really enjoy this conversation right here specifically, because everyone listening knows you is mostly aware of the biggest things in their life that are like either holding them back or really conflicting with their soul. They know that, and they're just choosing to ignore it because they don't have anyone around them to hold them accountable, right? And this is another conversation that we'll move into, I guess, slightly here, is just this general, and this is part of the point of Leaders and Legends, is to put people around you, the person that's coming to these retreats or that's working with us in whatever capacity, who are going to hold you accountable to who you are, right? Not the person that people think you are, not the person you've been playing, the role you've been playing, the person that you actually are. And if you aren't XYZ person and you're doing XYZ thing, I mean, it's our job to be like, hey man, like, just so you know, I don't respect that decision at all. It's not you. I personally am like a little disgusted by the fact that you'd want to do this, etc. There's a difference between being judgmental and speaking powerful truth to people.
That's right.
I think there's a huge discrepancy about this right now because people don't want to hear the truth because it hurts and it can sting. But the purpose of those of you listening to this, I'm hoping, being a not so perfect listener, you are also allowing yourself to actually embrace the energy of being not so perfect, which is that you have chinks in your armor. And if before you go into battle, do you really want to go with an exposed arm, or do you want chainmail armor on it? And that's my job and Colton's job and all the guys involved, is to be like, hey man, you're going to need some patching here, but it's going to hurt a little bit while I etch this together. Are you okay with that? Yeah, I'm okay with that.
We've got to pull the bullet out. Right.
Yeah,
like we've got to pull the bullet out so you can heal. And that's going to be a painful experience. But what you're saying essentially is just living in integrity with ourselves, staying true to ourselves. And the moment that we come out of integrity with ourselves and start crossing our values and our truth to appease or to gain validation or not have to experience that pain, it's going to manifest in other ways. Because then we won't be living out of our highest selves. And when we're not living from that level and we're not vibrating on the highest frequency, right, we're going to be vibrating on lower, and then we're just going to manifest and attract that in the same. And I think what's so beautiful is even when you have the courage to speak your truth and to say something someone might not want to hear, it's not from a place of judgment. Because the decision will always be that person's, and I will love you unconditionally with whatever decision you make. But I think you and I's gift at this point and all the work we've done and by finding ourselves is that we see right through your mask. I see you. And that's uncomfortable for a lot of people when I stare into your eyes and I see your soul unconditionally loved. So some people aren't ready for that, and they're not willing to face that they've been wearing a mask.
Yeah, which is, back to the not so perfect listener and humility and all the things. I mean, you can't even begin to step into the arena, so to speak, of the real personal development work, not the memorized patterns of the quote unquote successful on paper, which is what personal development is right now. The memorized patterns of those who are successful, quote unquote, on paper. You can fucking bookmark that shit, everybody, because that's the reality. The real personal growth and development work is, who am I? And why do I do these things that I'm doing? And why is my life not in the place I want it to be? And why are my relationships suffering? And why, to the point to get to a place where it's like, okay, cool. Like, I understand why as much as I can right now. How can I integrate myself into a life that is unique to me, that is giving me what I personally desire, not what's been put upon me to achieve, but what I want to achieve, and connect with other people in that way, all in that beautiful little triangle right there, that space.
And on that topic of personal development, is I realized at some point I plateaued. I plateaued in personal development because there's a point where there wasn't any more knowledge or any more information or any more wisdom or any more books or podcasts or speakers or events that was going to take me any farther. I plateaued. There comes a point where that can only take you so far, and then the game changes. The game has to go within. What you're saying right now is, who am I?
Right. Changes planes.
And you said it's something that's so important, because one of the things you said, it was 1 degree at a time. And I mentioned that I feel like I hit this warp speed black hole 6 months ago, where I went to a whole new level of my own personal life and my whole new level of love and love for myself. And it's like the concept of the bamboo tree. It's like you plant the seed. It takes 20 years to grow out of the ground, to even sprout. But then it's the fastest growing tree in the entire animal kingdom, growing like 80 feet in 2 weeks. It's like, okay, well then did the bamboo tree grow 80 feet in 2 weeks or 80 feet in 20 years? And so with that being said, I just want to share, because I'm excited to have this conversation publicly with somebody on a podcast to kind of explain what I've been experiencing. And I'm wondering if you'll relate. I think for me, the thing that changed the most in my life was when I actually began to like myself. I actually began to love myself. When I began to find who I was, it came with the acceptance of understanding that I'm only human, and loving the things that maybe I didn't like before, and loving the things I do, but beginning to believe in myself, love myself, like myself. The inner voice within, rather than being this incredible inner critic, became an inner friend. And then I realized if there's no enemy within, the enemy outside can do no harm. And now I get what Jesus meant when he says to love your neighbor as yourself. And the extent in which I could love my neighbor was only the extent that I can love myself. And as I began to love myself more, I found more joy. I found more peace. I found more happiness. And then everything around me began to transform. I mean, there's the law of attraction. As a man thinketh in his heart, who is he? And so is he. So as I began to change my identity of who I believe I was, my entire life began to unfold in the most beautiful way. And I began to attract people who are similar and radiating at these levels of consciousness. And so I guess my question for you is, how did you begin to love yourself, Graham? And how did you begin to like the person you were? And how did you begin to really find yourself? I know those are loaded questions.
I mean, I think for me, like, I had to get lost. I always say you have to get lost to get found.
So good.
So, yeah, you have to get lost to get found. So once I was lost, I just started to stumble upon things that made me feel different, made me feel good. And the first one was I watched Arnold Schwarzenegger's documentary. What was it? Pumping Iron. And I was like, It was like eating chili one cold winter night.
Let me get an impression. Come on, just one.
Maybe later. I was eating chili, watching Pumping Iron, and I was like, wow, like, I've always been a really great athlete, and maybe I could do something like this. I don't know exactly what it looks like, but the seed was planted. And then, like, soon after, my dad got really sick, and I started, like, naturally moving more into a place of, like, hey, I'm going to, like, leave school. I'm going to stop drug dealing. I'm going to stop doing drugs. I'm going to stop all these other businesses that I had and just start moving in a different direction. And it was those little micro decisions that, like, started to help me to even, like, have the courage to look in the mirror. And it started with getting lost, though. Like, I needed to get really outside of myself to figure out what my limits were. This is great. What limits to the masks I was wearing, I was willing to endure the consequences for. Right. Yeah. So I needed to get to a place where the consequences that came from the actions I took while wearing these masks were so intense that it was shaking me internally to the point where I was like, I literally cannot allow myself to go one step further, or I am selling myself forever. Like, I cannot go further than this, Graham. We cannot. Not in our heart, not ever, not now, and I started to, like, really, like, start the the edge started to reveal itself. And I'd gotten there, and I was like, all right, well, there's no further I can go. So I was like, what if I turn around? And I turned around, and then I saw Pumping Iron. And then I looked in the mirror, and then I was like, hey, you're looking really, really great. And then I was like, well, what would it be like to sell my businesses and start new? Well, it'd be amazing. Okay, well, let's start moving that direction now. And so, and by the time my dad was sick, I had already declared to myself I was going to do a bodybuilding show 9 months later. And so then all it was, day by day, just getting myself to the gym, being consistent. I started reading fiction, and I started to see like traits, personality traits of myself in the characters of the books, and like started to remember who I was. Started to remember the things that made me feel so powerful as a youth, as a child. Things that put me in a state of imagination that gave me like incredible awareness and vision and creativity all around me. And slowly but surely, those energies combined and channeled in a certain direction, a vision, a goal, if you will, started to make me feel like really good about myself, and started to make me feel like I was on a path, and started to make me have self-respect, and started to put me in position to connect with other people who saw me in that way, and who wanted to learn from me, and who wanted to be around me, not for any specific thing that I could give them, just because I had good energy and I was fun and I was a joyful person. And that compounded over time, and even to this day, has just allowed me to slowly move that 1 degree at a time. And it's been, I think you put it really well when you said I maxed out my personal growth and development in a certain way. I think like as the personal growth journey deepens, so too does the plane it's on. Like we're moving in a different plane. It's a different dimension, right? There's like, 3D, 4D, whatever. When we go to the movies, we see there's a new dimension to the experience. We look at a square, when we like draw the lines, now it's a cube, now it's a this, now it's a that. So too does the personal growth journey expand in a dimensional way. And so I think, to your point, like having learned so much, it was like, okay, well, the next evolution to my journey is better understanding myself in a way that allows me to feel the best I've felt and be someone that I could look up to for myself, into a state of like, the only thing that I need to focus on is me, and move myself into such an incredible energy that being around me creates the transformation.
Wow.
And, that took a long time, don't get me wrong, but it was 1 degree. It started with something as simple as that initial documentary. But I really, really love this quote, because so many of you guys listening don't understand that you have to get lost to get found.
Right.
That's like, and this is, I want to say one more thing before you jump in, because I know you're going to say something really great. This is, I remember reading a while back that somewhere in the Amazon, to become a man, one of the rites of passage was they would send you down a river, and you'd have to survive in the Amazon for like 7 days by yourself, and as like a boy, and you come back, you're a man. If not, you're not a man. You died or whatever. And that's kind of like what I'm saying here. Like, we got to get lost to get found. Like, we won't know ourselves and what our limits are and who we are until we really put ourselves in a position to actually decide, like, I have the hammer in hand. Am I going to do this effed up thing that isn't in line with me? Or like, where am I? Where do I stand with myself? Especially in a world where we are so, we're siphoned culture. Like we all have like IVs of culture. Like this is so weird.
The Matrix.
We're all sitting in these little rows and huts with IVs of like TikTok and Instagram, just
stimulate.
Just flooding ourselves with illusion, right? In those moments, we get clarity. And in clarity, we have conviction. And in conviction, we have power. And in power, things happen. You know what I'm saying?
Right. You actually, a couple things you said there. One that gave me goosebumps is you said I began to become the person I look up to. And I just think that's so beautiful, right? As that identity shifts, and as the identity shifts of who we believe we are, we start to live out that new identity. And that's one of the biggest things I've noticed with my coaching. I used to try to fix all these external things because I was doing it in my life. Oh, if there was more discipline, if I just forced myself to do this, if I read more books, right? If I did all these things, and I fixed all these things externally. But now the game has changed, because I've realized that a belief is just a thought we tell ourselves over and over and over again. Right, and our actions will always be in alignment with who we believe we are. So at this point, I just sit there and help my clients discover the truth of who they really are and build the identity of who they want to be so they can look up to themselves. And then they start living out of that new identity. And all the other things just happen naturally. They'll start taking on the action on these goals because it's who they are and they want to do it rather than forcing themselves to do it because they have to do it. All right. So, and just the last thing you said too, man, is actually being willing to step into that arena. It's being willing to go into the belly of the whale. Being willing to go into the belly of the whale, the unknown, the abyss, and to go off that quote. Yeah, it's like I love. Well, it's the biblical story, of Jonah in the belly of the whale.
Oh, you use the whale. Okay, yeah.
Right, and so even what you said, if you want to, you got to get lost to be found. I heard a beautiful quote recently. It's like if you want to be an explorer, prepare to be lost.
Yeah.
And if you want to be a healer, prepare to be broken. And if you want to be a lover, prepare to be both. And I was like, "Ooh, so good."
Yeah, I mean, there's like one more thing I was going to add to that. It's going to come back to me. Keep going.
Right, and so we're already flying through this podcast 40 minutes in, but there's still a couple things I want to touch on. I truly believe in Napoleon Hill's quote where he says that every adversity contains within it the seed of an equivalent advantage. Right? It really goes in alignment with Romans 8:28 that says God works all things together for our good. And for me personally, I know one of the things that has given me a lot of courage to be willing to step in the arena, to say no to the world's definition of success and follow my own heart and really pursue a dream, right, was actually the loss of my brother and father in those 6 months. Really, the biggest blessing that came from that was the awareness and the realization that I'm going to die. And I never truly had an understanding until I faced death face to face within 6 months apart, and I've experienced it in multiple different occasions. But it was a blessing in that. There's that Latin phrase, memento mori, remember you will die. Steve Jobs says that remembering you are going to die is the only way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. You have no reason not to follow your heart. And it really expanded my consciousness. Right? That was really one of the biggest blasts of enlightenment. My enlightenment journey was their loss. And so I just wanted to ask you, I know you lost your father and it was a similar experience, but what impact did losing your father have on your life?
I mean, all of it. I just knew that I couldn't continue to be. I knew that I wanted to honor my father by just being the best man I could be, and I knew that the things that I was doing, the decisions I was making, and the actions I were taking were dishonoring him. And I just knew that he was going to watch over me for the rest of my life, and I wasn't going to be a dishonorable son. I just wasn't going to do that. It wasn't who I was. It wasn't in me. And so I just took off I just lightened the load. I just let go of all the things that weren't that. And it happened slowly. But when I got to the moment of truth, it was clear as day. And like I said, every action since has been not perfect for sure, but I've never gone back on that decision and that path and that commitment I made to myself just to be a good man, just to be a human, to be real, to be myself, to continue to lead myself, and in the process be a good role model and example for other people. And then through that I discovered whole new worlds of awareness and of what it means to actually be true to myself. And so it's been incredible, but yeah, I mean, that changed my life forever. And I think to your point, I mean, obviously being faced with death, like I said, it's one of those moments of truth. My dad walked in, I'll never forget it. And he was like, this was over Thanksgiving break. I think it was my junior year of college. And he's like, I have an announcement to make. And I'm like, all right. I'm like, what the heck is this? And he's like, I have stage 4 lung cancer and I'm going to be all right. And as soon as he finished saying that, all I heard in my head was like, no, you're not. You're going to die. And I just knew right then. I was like, my life's going to change. Like right fucking now, it's going to change. And immediately there was like this much more mature side of myself that started to speak to me and was like, it's going to change and you're going to step up. And I was like, it's like, who the fuck is that? Who
said that?
Like,
yeah,
that was powerful. Holy shit! I didn't realize I could be like that. And so yeah, his decline into the celebration of him was in a lot of ways a rebirth for me. And, he was a great man, and I'm very fortunate to have been his son, to be his son. And I carry a lot of that with me still, and changed my life forever, and I won't ever forget it. And it's been over 7 years, and it's actually a great timeline for me, and just like how long I've been walking this specific path. And so feels peaceful. Yeah. Feels really peaceful. I feel nice and warm, like right here.
Yeah, man. I have a deep conviction in knowing that had to happen for me to be the man I am today. And because of that happening, I became a coach, and I became a healer, and I became a speaker to spread light into this world, and to continue the expansion of consciousness within myself and also within others. And so I always, kind of see, my brother as a sacrificial lamb. Obviously, I've got Maximus behind me on the TV screen. He's really symbolic of that, of freeing the people. And my brother was the sacrificial lamb for me to step into my truth so I can have an impact and a legacy on this world. Because ultimately, after losing them and sitting in that 9 to 5, being absolutely miserable, I had to ask myself the question, I only get one life to live, one run at this. Is this really what I want to do? Am I going to chase this definition of success just to make some money and maybe have some nice cars? I was like, nah, fuck that, man. I'm going to leave my mark. I'm going to leave a legacy, man. I'm going down swinging, and I'm going to change this world as much as I can. And that really starts by changing myself. And I think, one of the things that you planted the seed to read the book Power versus Force many months ago, and I finally picked it up recently. And within that book, David Hawkins creates the map of consciousness, which once I saw it, I could never unsee it. I mean, it really changed the way in which I see life and see a lot of things. And so one of the biggest realizations I've come into recently is this notion that everything we think we want, we only want because of the feeling we think it's going to give to us. And most of the world is chasing these material, especially Western world. I think that the Eastern practices really have caught on to this long ago. But our Western world is, if we want the nicer cars and the nicer clothes and all these things, because it's not necessarily the car we want, it's the feeling we think having that car will give us, right? Which may be joy, which may be love, maybe a little bit of fun. And then until I realized that all of those things that I thought I had to get outside of me are already within me. And those feelings of love and joy and peace.
I remember what I was going to say now.
Those feelings of love, joy, and peace are within me. And now I was like, oh, well, Jesus' words came to life, that the kingdom of God is within. These feelings of peace and love and joy are already within me. And now I was like, oh, dude, these monks have it figured out. They said, screw that. They sit there all day with their eyes closed, and they're experiencing heaven on earth. And that's really begun to change the game for me, because they're on a foundation. And I love how Jesus speaks about this too. He says, when you build your house, don't build it on sand. Build it on a firm foundation, so that when the winds come and the waves blow, your house is not knocked over. And I realized he wasn't talking about a house. He was talking about our own home. And now I've got my place and myself to a place where my foundation, my heart, is built on a firm foundation. And there's very little things outside of me that can rock my foundation. And I constantly live in a state of love, joy, and peace. Right? And I notice that as I live in that, from those frequencies and from that foundation, that I begin to manifest and attract things that are on that similar wave, which reveals to me. Because now all of these things that I've read in the Bible for so long, growing up a Christian, I have understanding of. It's like what we said earlier. The sauce is inexplicable. I can't intellectually explain to you unconditional love. You have to experience yourself and feel it before you actually gain understanding. Oh, well, that makes sense. In the book of Proverbs, it says, seek wisdom and seek knowledge, but above all else, seek understanding. So it's like, oh, now all these things have come to light. So in the book of Matthew, chapter 6, verse 33, when Jesus says, seek first the kingdom of God, and then all these other things will be added to you. Okay, well, where did he say the kingdom of God was? Within. And so for me, this has just been the biggest breakthrough. And all these, and what's beautiful is all those 10 years of personal development didn't go anywhere. All they're doing is now complementing it now with actually true power rather than force.
How does that leave you feeling?
Electric. Literally electric. Power and energy. There's a source field, man. Every encounter with every human being is different. I look forward to just walking up to the person at the fast food, and rather than just asking for what I want like everybody else, to truly look at them in the eyes and say, hi, Chris, see their name tag, and it shocks them. All right, they get shot into the present. They get kicked out of their mind and brought into the moment. And then just a smile, just to share love with them, man. Say, I see you, because when I see you, I see me. And then to watch them go over the coworker, and all of a sudden they have a smile on their face, and they make that coworker smile. And to watch the trickle effect happen, the little pebble in the ocean, man. And it's every moment now is beautiful. Even a moment I'm sitting in traffic, there's love in that moment. There's joy in that moment. There's peace in that moment. I'm no longer in a rush to get anywhere. I know all these good things are coming, so I can just sit here in the moment, enjoying it as I patiently watch the manifestation and the unfolding of my dreams come true. I said, just the game has completely changed as I've learned how to go within and find this love, joy, peace, and all these other things within me, man. And obviously, a big part of that is your help and guidance, as well.
Can you quantify the feeling?
You quantify or try to put it into words?
Yeah, quantify. Like, can you make it something logical?
Yeah, The Map of Consciousness by David Hawkins. It's the only way I've found to actually quantify expansion, and now be able to see expansion in my clients, expansion in myself. The Map of Consciousness.
But you found that after you'd already discovered the feeling.
Right, but yes, it made sense to
So
it.
then
It was
made
a way to
sense.
quantify it. Yes.
Right. My point is, for those who have not yet experienced what that moment feels like, it could be, and this is something I see, it could easily just be another layer to a personal growth and development memorization. So
Yes.
people just, I think what I'm trying to say is, Colton's path to understanding came through experience, then through a reverse engineering of the experience into something logical, rational, something tangible. Does that make sense?
You're so right, because if I would have read Power versus Force 5 years ago, I would have zero understanding. Zero.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I experienced the I am and consciousness and had
Where
an
did you
understanding.
experience it, Colton?
Oh boy. Well, obviously the bamboo thing, it happened in 6 months or 20 years. But one of the most profound experiences for me is one of the coaching experiences that you and I had together, where you really brought the sauce and allowed me to experience the sauce and allowed me to go within. But the second would be going on the men's retreat, the Leaders and the Legends men's retreat, as just an attendant, never knowing that I would ever be a co-host and a partner to you, and a facilitator to facilitate these experiences with men. To just have an environment that I can go to for a week with other like-minded men who are on similar planes of consciousness, for everyone to put their walls down and just be who they truly are, and to be seen, and the love that I experienced, the breathwork encounters that I had, to truly experience what honestly just felt like God's presence, a peace that surpasses all understanding. Those really took me to a different dimension, man. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah. Right. Once the mind expands, it can never go back to its original dimensions. But so too energetically. Once your field expands, it can never go back to its original dimensions of feeling. Right. And I misunderstood.
And as the beautiful thing for me is, as I say, once you understand it, it's like there may be times when you're kind of you kind of get distracted in life, and you're kind of going through the motions, but you always know where to go back to once you've experienced it, and that's always a choice. And so,
How do you feel like the community component like amplified that for you, or changed the way that you viewed that understanding or viewed yourself?
I think even to give some context from our last retreat, as a facilitator, to watch these new men all come together, and specifically one of the gentlemen, when we got around in a group circle, it was kind of an opportunity for someone to be vulnerable, and one of the gentlemen there just popped it off, dude. He just put all the walls down and really let us see his heart and the depth of some of the pain he experienced. And the moment that he put those walls down, everybody in the room had permission and felt the permission to put their walls down, and the floodgates open, and healing began to happen, and tears begin to flow. And it's like, oh, men don't cry, but we do. And as soon as one person popped it off, the game changed, the energy changed, everything changed for the entire rest of the retreat. So just having that collective experience is a major component, and to have brothers that are there to hold that space and to honor you and to see you for who you truly are. That's a huge part of it, man.
So what's been like the most, so I mean, like what you're saying is, in a way, is bringing it full circle. That bamboo tree example, how has it been to grow 90 feet in the last like 4 or 5 months?
I think for me personally, I had all the knowledge and wisdom, and I was trying to use everything by force before. I was trying to force everything to happen. And I think now I've kind of surrendered, and it just allowed, once I experienced what true power was, true power, and then basically, to emphasize the word love, combining with power, then to combine everything I've ever learned with that, I just feel like I've hit.
How does that
like
translate into your like? How does that translate into your day to day from like a career perspective? Because I think that a lot of people listening to this, and a lot of people in your network, and a lot of people like that I've met from the Tampa community are like very career focused, driven, like have ambition to a degree. How is that? How has that? How has discovering what power really is impacted your life day to day and your energy? Therefore,
there's obviously some times when I'm physically fatigued, and I don't feel like I can fully express the fullness of myself. But my spiritual energy is not fatigued any longer. I just feel like every moment I enjoy now, and as I was saying earlier, every interaction with every human being. The insecurities have been wiped away. The confidence and belief in myself is truly there, and it's just truly, I don't know how to explain it, but everything has begun to change, and the power is tangible and felt by everybody at this point. Um, and so I just want to, Graham, we're about to approach an hour here, and we could probably cap it out at that. But to take this last couple minutes to explain something that you've created and allowed me to be a partner on, which is these Leaders into Legends men's retreat, where we've been able to cultivate and create a space for this power to flow, and people to really gain healing and understanding about who they truly are. And if you just kind of want to touch on what this is and what this can be for people who are really on seeking their own enlightenment journey, because it's clearly not for everybody, and some people just aren't ready nor prepared for it. But those who are and feel this tug in your heart to continue this growth, you want to just touch on that a little bit.
sure. I feel like if you're someone who's listening to this right now and you've been following Colton for a little while, or you like resonate with his message, more or less, like you just sense that there's a little bit of a void inside of you in some way, shape, or form. Like whether it's with your relationships or just something's off, or it's with the career, it's like I'm just not fulfilled fully, or if it's just my personal life, if it's just there's any level of something, or right? If there's any level of that, then this is an opportunity for you to look in the mirror and start to become aware that you might actually be lost, more lost than you think, and that's okay, right? Because like I said, you gotta get lost to get found. And the Leaders to Legends men's retreats are a place to be found. They're a place to come into alignment with who you are. They're a place to have a lot of fun and express yourself however you choose. They're a place to, and I'll bring it full circle back from earlier. The thing I forgot was that so much of the work we do at these retreats is we become the archaeologist of ourselves. We got the little toothbrush and the little toothbrush and the magnifying glass, and we're etching the fossil within the person that we've always been, that we're remembering, and we're etching away everything that isn't us.
And chiseling away. That's right.
Exactly, chiseling away. So I got my little think of like Indiana Jones type thing. Like I got like my little like Egyptian like adventurer hat, the khaki vibe, and I'm like got the drill going and shit. And we're just like, what have I forgotten that I am? And for people who feel like they have an inkling that they're missing something, or that they have a void they want to better understand and potentially fill, then this is a place to start. And the reason that I decided to start hosting these was because I personally had a really great group of guy clients that I was working with, and just thought it would be really fun to get them all together and jam and spend a week together and get to know each other more, and then add layers of awareness generating, heart expanding, and mind opening exercises that allowed more connectivity for the self and thus for everyone involved. And that's just continued to manifest and transform in lots of different ways. But it's for people like that, people who have a void that they want to fill and step into a new version of themselves, one that moves from a leader, which in my opinion, in a lot of ways, is a memorized set of behaviors that influence people to follow, versus a legend, which is someone just being themselves, uniquely themselves, and thus leading from a genuine place of a balanced masculine feminine, of joy, of ambition, of vision, of real power, and of real understanding and love. And that's what I think the men's retreats are really all about. And through that, we can all change the world by changing ourselves, which is, the ultimate thesis of Pillars of Growth, which is the company that I started in 2017. And I think that the phases that occur at the retreat or the things that are present more or less, is there's expansion, mentally and heart opening expansion. There's community, getting around other people, and bringing back a very intimate experience that most of us haven't had since we were younger, like children, where we had like lots of friends in a close-knit circle, and we all were supportive and loved one another and played with one another every single day and got to like just be free in that regard. There's healing involved. Obviously, you guys have seen the freaking videos of people crying and people having breakthroughs and people letting go. And there's lots of that. And then there's lots of fun. I mean, Colton. Colton's a fun person. He's just a fun person. He's always cracking jokes. He's always having a good time. And the same too is for me. And so if you're someone who is desiring more expansion, desiring more community, desiring more connection, desiring inner healing and letting go and lightening the load, so to speak, and you want to have a lot of fun, then the Leaders Legends Men's Retreat is the place. And it's a huge commitment. It's going to change your life forever. You'll never be the same. You're going to meet incredible people that you'll be friends with for life. And you're never going to express yourself day to day like you've been again. And that's really, really daunting for a lot of people, but not for everyone. And so if you're the person that's listening right now that it's not, you're like, oof, I feel that, but I also feel like I might be able to like get the courage to do something like that, or I'm curious about it, or I think I'm ready. The worst thing you can do is get in touch with Colton or myself and find out if you are. We will tell you based off of what we're seeing, and we're going to put you in the best position to be successful, whether it's at the retreat or maybe you come to a later one. But make the connection now. Like, don't wait. And if what we are saying is daunting to you, then that's okay. It is. I know that it is. It's still daunting for me. I mean, shit. Every time we get the groups together, I'm like, I gotta like, whew, here we go. Like, when we go in, anything can happen in the best possible way. And yeah, I think that's a good description of men's retreats. What do you think?
It's beautiful, man. And I think, just some of the physical things we actually do as far as mountain climbing and cold plunging as a group, and mountain lakes and ice baths and playing sports and spike ball and football and ultimate frisbee and games and playing music. I mean, it's just everything all encompassed into one. And, obviously you and I are never here to sell anybody. We never got into this business for the money. But I do believe it's an investment and a key to a door that you will never regret walking through. Yeah. It's the most beautiful experience of my life, and as every other man said in the last exit interview, is the most beautiful, fun week of their life as well. So with that being said, Graham, real quickly, where can people find you if they want to maybe pursue you with coaching or just to connect with you?
At Graham.Lichtner on Instagram. That's good.
Yeah. How do you spell Lichtner?
Lichtner. Graham, Graham, at Graham.Lichtner.
Heck yeah, man. Well, dude, it was truly a freaking honor to have you as my first guest. There's nobody I would want more for this experience. I hope that anyone who's listening, maybe there was some seeds that we planted in you that changed your perspective just a little bit, and helped you dive a little deeper into your own expansion of consciousness. If you did get something from it, Graham and I would love to hear from you. Share it with us. That lights us on fire. We just love knowing that we can continue to be a light for this world and impact the lives of others. That's truly what we're here to do, why we took this journey, to be coaches and to be facilitators. But with that being said, we love you. Graham, I love you to death. And if you got something from this podcast, add a like, add a comment, share it with a friend. Just continue to expand the light. And this is the Not So Perfect podcast. My name is Colton Daly. I'm your Not So Perfect host. And what are we breaking it down on, Graham? This one's on you as a guest.
Oof.
I'm thinking the sauce.
No. I had something.
Come on, brother. Don't be holding up my outro.
I'm holding it up. You have anything?
Sauce. The sauce.
No, it's not the sauce.
Now we're going sauce on 3. You
I
ready?
want to break down on khaki, like khaki shorts, archaeology
Oh my
flow.
gosh,
Yeah,
just send
khaki
it.
shorts,
On you. Come
khaki
on.
shorts, archaeology flow on me on 3.
That's the
Ready?
weirdness.
1,
Yep.
2, 3. Khaki
flow,
shorts,
archaeologist.
archaeology flow.
I'm ending this podcast. Peace.